Hello everyone. I welcome you all to Sociology Uncomplicated series, and through this series we will cover the entire sociology optional. Today we will discuss how sociology emerged as a discipline. What were the contributing factors? As ideas never emerge in a vacuum, sociology as a subject also never emerged in a vacuum. There were so many factors which led to the making of this subject. So we will read those factors in this lecture. The commercial revolution, the scientific revolution and renaissance, the post-renaissance development, Enlightenment period, the French Revolution, the Industrial Revolution, and how these events shaped the subject sociology. So you must have seen the COVID-19 pandemic period. When the COVID-19 pandemic period came, there was suddenly development of vaccines. So when there were some problems, some disease, that led to development of a treatment. Thus, sociology also emerged because of the social pathologies or social deficiencies which were there in the society of 18th, 19th century Europe. That is why it emerged only in Europe, not in other places. To cure that social pathologies, the social deficiencies, inequality, poverty, this subject emerged. A lot was happening in the Europe. A lot of social upheaval was happening in the Europe. So because of that, this subject emerged. Now, Europe between 14th and 19th century experienced the numerous revolutions, not one, two, three, but numerous revolutions. It started with the commercial revolution, then came the era of scientific period, then political revolutions like French Revolution, and then the industrial revolution. So one after another, there were revolutions after revolutions which were happening, and the society was changing at a very, very fast rate. You can understand it with the example of India. When India was colonized by Britishers, our societal structure changed, our cultural values changed, our food basket changed, our way of doing commerce changed. Now everything changed. Because of that, there was a rise of Renaissance, an idea to again understand the basic virtues of Indian society. The reminiscing of past happened, and there were so many literatures which were written. Like Munshi Premchand wrote novel Karma Bhumi, and it beautifully captured the awakening. First, the awakening started from the middle class intelligentsia, the English educated class, and then it slowly percolated to the other classes as well. So when the society goes through upheaval, new idea emerges. Now let's read the commercial revolution, the first revolution which is sort of shaping the subject. Now, if you see the medieval Europe, it was a closed kind of economy, land-based economy, and the trade routes were also sort of monopolized. And this was not giving way to any kind of commercial expansion. However, there were voyages. You must have heard the name of people like Vasco da Gama or Christopher Columbus. So Vasco da Gama and Christopher Columbus, they were able to find trade routes. Da Gama was able to find a trade route to India. And thus the whole market of Indian spices were opened up. Christopher Columbus, on the other hand, reached America, and then the Spanish Empire in America, Britain, France, and Holland followed. Now, due to this trade expanded, new financial instruments started coming into the place, like check was invented in the 18th century. Paper money replaced traditionally gold and silver was used for trade, but now paper money was used. Joint stock companies emerged. So all of this changed the entire landscape. Perhaps the most significant contribution was the rise of merchant class, bankers, ship owners, and investors. Now the land alone was not deciding who is powerful or who has money. Now the finance was also deciding it. Merchant class became more and more powerful. The next revolution was the scientific revolution, and it all started with a theory given by the Copernicus. It is a very important theory. Let us understand this theory. So before Copernicus, it was assumed that Earth is center of the entire universe, and all the sun and other planets are revolving around the Earth. Now this is based on a belief that humans are the most superior thing in the entire universe, and thus they reside on Earth. So Earth has to be superior. Every other thing will be inferior to it. So it is also called a geocentric theory. Now the Copernicus said that no, this is false. The sun is in the center of the universe, and every other thing, including Earth, is revolving around us. This changed the entire divinity or the philosophy that the humans are the most superior thing in the entire universe. And this theory was called as heliocentricity. This challenged all the divineness or the divine theory of making of earth or coming of the human beings on earth. This was challenged through the scientific revolution. It unfolded during the Renaissance period. Now, medieval Europe was dominated by the church. Church was not just a merely religious institution. It was deciding your way of life. It was giving legitimacy to who will become powerful, who will be considered powerful, who will have authority, what learning should prevail, what should be the value and consciousness of common people. So it was indulging into even your basic human activities as well. Now, when Renaissance came, it marked a decisive break from the traditional medieval authority and introduced a spirit of observation. We will observe things, criticize the divinity, and independent inquiry. Now, the most significant change was in painting. Now, painting was now not just about the divinity, it was about observation. So, in India, also, you will see bazaar style of painting. They are not making any divine structure. They are simply drawing what is happening in the market, what is happening in the day-to-day life. And it also led to the development in the field of anatomy, physiology, and pathology. Doctors and physiologists began to directly observe how the body was constructed. This was an important development. After this, there was post-Renaissance scientific development. The work of Galilei or Kepler or Sir Isaac Newton now established a method. What was this method? What is scientific method? Now, if anybody says that moon is 50 lakh kilometers from Earth, it is written in the scripture. Science will say if it is 50 lakh kilometers from Earth, prove me. Can you prove it? If you can prove it, the same thing can be proved with a similar method by anyone else as well. It can be proved again and again. It can be testified again and again. It can be observed again and again. It can be empirically observed and verified. If anything can be empirically observed or verified, then only it will be considered as scientifically existing. So if we say that sun is in the center of the universe, there should be some proof to it. Without any proof, anything which is written in the scripture or anything which is said by church or anything which is sort of divine will not be accepted. Thus, they also challenge the hierarchical authority that, like in India, Brahmins will be at top. What is the scientific basis of it? Are they having bigger brains? Are they having any superiority? If it is not scientifically proven, they will discard it. So everything should have the scientific process to it of observing, testifying, and then accepting. Then biology and the human organism. So a very important invention happened by William Harvey. What was that? That was the discovery of blood circulation in the 17th century. It transformed the understanding of the human body. Now, body was not now seen as unrelated part that I have a nose, I have a ear, I have a liver. It is interconnected because of that discovery of blood circulation. Now, immediately some of the thinkers drew parallel from it. That society also is like a human body. Everything is interconnected. Religion, education, law, everything is interconnected. And every part of society is serving a function. Like our human body. Respiratory system has a function. Okay. Every organ is serving a purpose. So some thinkers came like Emile Durkheim. They said that society also has different organs and they also serve a positive purpose. And this paradigm was called as functionalist perspective. Functionalist because everything is serving a function. So they always saw everything which is existing in the society with a positive lens. And there were other thinkers as well, like Auguste Comte is often considered as the father of sociology, Spencer. They drew parallel with this finding. Then Darwin came. Darwin gave a theory of survival of the fittest. Previously, there were so many theories. Every religion had different theory. Darwin said that the species that you are seeing now, they were able to adapt to the changing environment, the changing scenario, the changing temperature, the changing humidity, the changing conditions. They were able to adapt, thus they were fitter. The organism which will be fitter will survive. So he gave the theory of survival of the fittest. The fitter you are, the more chances that you will survive and you will adapt to the changing condition. Now, this was taken up by certain thinkers like Herbert Spencer. Now, he brought this theory into the human evolution as well, in the human society as well. He made it a sort of racial, that certain races who are richer, certain races who are colonizing other races, they are superior, they are fitter. And from there, a racial theory came, white man burden theory. What this theory says, that if a white man is coming to India and he's colonizing the Indian society, he is trying to civilize the people, because people here are inferior. They are not civilized. So it is called as white man burden theory. This became a sort of racial theory as well. And this was later taken up by people like Hitler, Adolf Hitler. So not all theories which were developing were sort of emancipatory. Certain theories also had fallouts. Now, the Enlightenment period, the period of reason. If you are saying anything, if you are saying that Earth has oxygen, then what is the proof? So you will say that, okay, oxygen is needed in the human being, oxygen, and human being is breathing, and you will prove it. Okay, then through the proof, through the reason, you are proving any of the assumptions. If it is not proved, it will not be accepted. The age of reason is called as Enlightenment. I will accept only those things which is true according to reason. You must have heard about certain philosophers like Osho Rajneesh. So he was also believer of this philosophy, that if I have to accept anything, I will accept only when it is based on reason. One thing is existing or not existing. I do not believe in existence. I can feel it, I can observe it. If I cannot feel, I cannot observe, then this thing doesn't exist for me. This is called as the age of reason. Now, there were three core beliefs of this Enlightenment period. The first is society can be studied scientifically. Just as Newton studied or used mathematics to reveal the laws governing the physical universe, the gravity, Enlightenment thinkers believed that the laws governing human society could be discovered through rational inquiry. Idea that society can be also studied scientifically. And then theories came. Theories like to study the suicide. Why human commit suicide? Now people will say it is because of psychological reason. Sociologists will say no, it is not because of psychological deficiencies. It is because of societal factors. If there is increasing individualism, society will increase. Sociologists will say that if the society is going under crisis, if a person is feeling that his future is no longer existing because of societal factors, like farmer suicide. So farmer suicide when they believe that they do not have any other option, they do not see any future. When they are thinking in this manner, then they resort to suicide. They are unable to pay loans. They feel helpless. So it is not just because of psychological reasons. And how we can prove it? So sociologists will collect data and then they will analyze the factors. Okay, and then they will give the theory. Like Emile Durkheim had given the theory of society. And second is human beings are rational. So if people are fundamentally rational, they can understand their social conditions. If I am poor, why I am poor? What is the reason I am poor? If I am born and brought up in a caste and I am facing any kind of discrimination, why I am facing it? And I can change it. It is not divine. The caste system is not made by God. It is made by humans. I can challenge it. So people like Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, who challenged this caste system, it was based on what? It was based on rationality. So if people are rational, then they are capable of understanding their social conditions. Why this particular social condition exists? If sati is existing, why it is existing? What is the rationale behind it? If there is no rationale, then it should go away. And this belief was a radical departure from the medieval view that society was divinely arranged. It is made by God. Every social stratification is made by supernatural power, and therefore it cannot be changed. And third was the progress is possible. Society is not static. Society needs to progress. Institutions can be reformed. Religion can be reformed. Conditions can be improved. The untouchability can be removed. Patriarchy can be removed. Equality can be established. And it was guided by a reason. Okay, we can create more freedom, we can create more well-being, we can create social justice, we can create an environment where everyone who is living have a dignity. This faith in progress gave sociology both its purpose and optimism. Now, there were four important key thinkers. The first one was Montesquieu. He wrote a book which was called as The Spirit of the Law. Now, he gave a simple theory. He said that no single authority should hold all the power. Now, there is a saying, Power corrupts, absolute power corrupts absolutely. If you are giving all the power to one person, he will usurp the power. The freedom of people will be curbed. So Montesquieu said that we should have separation of power. Certain powers for the executive, for the legislative, for the judiciary, and they should be independent in their own functioning. It should be separated. His theory of separation of power is the foundation of democratic governance worldwide, without which there will not be any democracy. If you give all the power to prime minister, he will absorb all the power. If you give all the power to judiciary, they will kill all the powers of other institutions. So we need to create separate institutions with their own sphere of power. Then came the John Locke. He argued that every individual has certain rights which no one can take, no authority can take, like the right to life, the right to property, and the right to personal freedom. If any ruler is violating these rights or has fortified this authority, he should be removed. Now, this is very central to your fundamental rights. It has come from John Locke. So your life is not on the mercy of king. King cannot come and on the whims and fancies can kill anybody on the basis of dictum, Tughlaqi Farman. Every individual possesses some natural rights. And then came the Voltaire. He championed religious freedom, religious tolerance. There is no incompatibility of two religions. It is just a way of life. The fundamental essence of humanity remains same. He argued that individual right of expressions are inviolable regardless of what any authority, religious or political, might prefer. Okay, so it is inviolable. It is not based on the whims and fancy of any religious institutions or any political institution. Then came Rousseau. He argued in his theory of social contract that any legitimate political power will flow from the consent of the governed. Our constitution starts from we, the people of India. So we, the people of India, are the sovereign. We will decide what is good for our nation. People have the right to choose their sovereign. A government that does not represent the will of the people lacks legitimacy. So we are the powerful. The people who are serving the will of the people. They cannot impose their will on the people. It is against the spirit of democracy. Now, these ideas did not remain confined to books. They became the spirit of a revolution, which is called as French Revolution. Now, let's understand French Revolution. Okay. First, we will understand the French Revolution, then we will understand the three intellectual precursors of sociology. So, French Revolution, just understand with the Indian society parallel. In our Indian society, understand this is a triangle. On the top of the hierarchy is Brahmins. Okay. Let's say here are Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, okay, Shudras. Now, this is based on ascription, that is birth based. It cannot be changed based on your skill, your talent, your knowledge, your hard work. Same was in the French society. There were threefold classification. Okay, that threefold classification was, the first state was clergy, and clergy was comprised of all the religious people, bishops, cardinals. They lived extraordinary luxury lives. They were not devoting anything to religion. They were just enjoying life. And the second state was the nobility. Okay. Now, nobility also involved people who were enjoying lavish lifestyles. They were landlords. They were sucking all the hard work of peasants and laborers. They were taking all the money that were earned by these laborers, these workers. They were not getting their due. And they spent extravagantly without any work. This was called as the second state. And the third was comprised of everyone else who was working very, very hard, tirelessly. Peasants, merchants, artisans, lawyers, and bourgeoisie. They were paying the maximum taxes. They constitute the 80% of the population, owned only 30% of the land. And these injustice, the 2% of population of France owned 35% of the property, something which you can see in the Oxfam report as well. 1% population having 40% of the property. So you can understand these things by keeping in your mind the Indian society. The bourgeois class, the merchants, the bankers, the manufacturers, the lawyers occupied an enormous position. They were rich. They were economically powerful. They were having all authorities. And these people who were working hard virtually had no say. Then the revolution unfolds. So in 1789, the third state, they collected and gathered themselves in a tennis court. And they swear to draft a new constitution for France, a constitution where everybody will be equal. And this began the revolution. On the 14th July 1789, the people of Paris stormed the Bastille, which was a kind of a royal prison that stood till now as the supreme symbol of tyranny. France still celebrates the 14th July 1789 as an Independence Day. And not just the things changed in France, the divine rights, all the privileges of clergy and nobility, but it traveled even the Indian Oceans and it reached India. The three principles of liberty, equality, and fraternity reached India, and it also was written in the Indian Constitution. Now, what is liberty? Absence of restraint. If you want to do anything in life without harming others, you will have freedom. What is equality? If I am doing a particular task, if somebody else is doing any particular task, the result should not be dependent on my caste, my religion, my race, my father's position. That is equality. And fraternity is, if we are living in a society, we should have brotherhood, not hatred. So these three principles, liberty, equality, and fraternity, traveled to even India. Now, this French Revolution was a spark point for sociology. The entire society, the entire social structure was changed. The traditional authority collapsed. The relationship between poverty, property, power, and social order changed entirely. The first generation of sociologists, it was Comte, it was Tocqueville, it was Saint-Simon, they spent their intellectual lives trying to answer the question the French Revolution raised. What will happen to the society, the vacuum that was created? This was the spark point from which the sociology as a subject emerged. Now, let's talk about the Industrial Revolution. Now, what is the Industrial Revolution? How it changed? Previously, also people were manufacturing things. People were making artifacts. If an artifact was made, it was involving the entire consciousness of a person. He was giving his entire being to making of that particular object. But then came machines. There was a gentleman named James Hargreaves. He invented the spinning jenny in 1767. Now threads, the production of thread multiplied, and then all the synthetic products flooded the markets, like even India. The Calico Act banned the handmade products, and it flooded it. The factory-made products had the market because the process of colonization was going on. They were flooding these markets of India, Burma, and all other colonies. So it created a capitalist class, the people who own these machines, the people who own these factories, but it also created workers. It also created proletariat. Okay, proletariat is nothing but a French name for the workers. People who do not own things, have nots. They are working tirelessly. Then came Richard Arkwright. He invented the water frame. Samuel Crompton. Okay, so these inventions led to a large-scale production. Factories were established. Now the condition of labor deteriorated. People were working tirelessly 8 to 10 hours, 12 hours, working on very poor wage, living in the overcrowded, unsanitary conditions of rapidly expanding industrial cities. Poverty was real and visible. New kind of jobs, beggary also developed, theft, petty crimes. All these were coming up. It was the result of specific economic system that separated workers from the ownership of the means of production. Assume that if you are making an earthen pot, you are completely related to that product. But if you are just putting a nail in the table, on 1,000 table, will you be connected to that table? That product will be connected to you? No. You are now becoming aloof to the product that you have made. This is what Industrial Revolution produced. And the family system also underwent a change. Previously, the family system was based on joint family. Now it became nuclear family. People migrated to cities like Manchester, which was very famous for cotton production, mass cotton production. So the family system also changed. The land, which was the foundation of the feudal order, totally collapsed. Now, capital, money invested in factories, machines, and commerce now became the new basis of wealth and power. Feudal landlords, they declined in their significance. A new class of industrialists and capitalists, now they were on the top. Okay. The industrial cities. So urbanization was the inevitable companion of industrialization. Cities grew at a very fast pace. Okay. Ancient cities, if you will go to Athens and Rome, they were very aesthetically beautiful. They were repository of civilizational virtues and cultural achievements. However, the new industrial cities like Manchester, Liverpool, Birmingham, they were now seen with the repository of miseries, poverty, overcrowding, diseases, social dislocation, slums were developed. People were living in very poor condition. It shook the mind of observers across the political spectrum and made the industrial city an object of sociological inquiry. Now, the factory system introduced a new rhythm to human life. The factory siren was awakening people, not the sun. And it was marking the end and the beginning of the working day. People now became like a cog in the machine. They completely lost their creativity. The machine, not the craftsman's skill, now dominated the production process. A carpenter who is making a chair has a direct relationship with that. But if a factory worker who is tightening some nut or some bolt will not have that kind of a relationship. Now, out of all these, sociology emerged. There were the 5 revolutions: the commercial revolution, the scientific, the Enlightenment period, French Revolution, and Industrial Revolution. So the commercial revolution created a global economy. When these people, the voyagers, reached to places like India or America, they found the new trade routes. A powerful middle class hungry for political rights emerged. Then the scientific revolution, which gave the humanity the tool to observe things, question things, and systematically understand the world. Okay, and it gave the possibility of understanding the same society through this rigorous process, through this step-by-step process. The Enlightenment established that reason, that not tradition or divine authority was the proper standard of evaluating the social institutions. If I have to analyze family, if I have to analyze gender, if I have to analyze education, I cannot analyze based on divinity. I will analyze it based on rationality. So it reshaped how we look into the world. And then the French Revolution destroyed the old social order altogether. It raised a fundamental question about the power, equality, and social cohesion. All the divine authority of clergy, etc., were dismantled, and the idea of liberty, equality, and fraternity reached the far corners of this world. The Industrial Revolution created new social classes, new forms of poverty, inequality, and an entirely new urban life, a new relationship between human beings and their work. The earlier relationship totally got dismantled. The work was not for fulfilling your desire. Work was for earning profit. So an industrialist were working more and more, producing more and more things to earn more profit. And then came marketing. So even if there is not substantially need of a new product, through marketing, they will create that need. So this was never before event. To understand the never before event, we did not have any subject to analyze these changing events. We needed a new subject, right? And that new subject was sociology, to understand all these social upheavals, all these political change, all these social change, all this cultural change. And thus, this subject emerged. Now, as science was worshipped everywhere, it was worshipped in all the corners of the Europe. So, the initial founding fathers of sociology also were deeply inspired with the method, and they wanted that sociology should be also a scientific method. Thus, when we will learn in the next class about the fundamental schools, you will see a lot of influence of scientific method. They will try to make science, sociology, a most sophisticated of all the sciences. Now, sociology is not just like any other subject. You can literally observe things in front of your eyes. How any radical changes, any idea emerges from upheavals. When there was a period of British exploitation, then you see people like Rajaram Mohan Rai, people like Ishwachandra Vidyasagar emerging from it. And then they brought new ideas. People like Swami Vivekananda, they brought new ideas. So new ideas emerges when the society is going through a crisis. So all these changes, which were sort of positive changes, but it brought the crisis because old social realities were giving way to new social realities, and thus the society was going through a complete upheaval. Thus, sociology emerged from all these revolutions. Sociology as a subject is very, very beautiful to understand. When we will read other chapters, this is just the beginning. I will try to correlate all the basic theories with the recent and contemporary examples that you also can observe. Until then, thank you very much. Take care and best wishes.